we have talked a lot about the joy of life. Definitely, it would be great to talk about the joy of life for investors before we get on to our urban development policy. Hopefully, we are going to hear some interesting insights from Elena Panina. And also, can I introduce Mr. Nicholay Sluka, an urbanist, in economic geography expert. Hearing the concept of growth points during Andrei's and Andreas' presentations, it would be great to hear your opinion, Mr. Sluka, on the on how what we have just heard is related to the concepts of urban development that you're now studying. If your comment, if possible. Thank you very much. Well, it's true that we would like to use this forum, this gathering, to have a more expanded view on Moscow in the context of global processes. We have just heard a presentation on the Moscow, the view from inside. Can I go beyond and address and refer to the international experience? I would like to cover three blocks of issues. The first one is the modern interpretation of the global city notion. The second is the place that Moscow occupies among the cities of the world. And the third, what are the prospects of Moscow development in the current context? If we now talk about the first block, what is actually a global city? The term itself indicates definitely that the notion is very close to the concept of globalization. And it's true that research has demonstrated that the number of factors and the set of factors that determine the functioning of large cities, large agglomerations, has been amending significantly, has seen quite a few changes, among which we can single out the accelerated development of network structures formed by global firms, global companies, and international institutions. And the overlay of such network structures on the city system gives rise to a concept of central places, or in other words, closely cooperating cities. And this community has received a special notion, a special term, which is the archipelago of cities. And on this present-day basis, special literature normally refers to a global city as a post-industrialized center, which is to the maximum extent integrated with international institutions, and that is taking and using opportunities for development by exploiting urban agglomeration. There is quite a load of very interesting conclusions. First of all, there is no such thing as a unique global city taken separately, because we are actually referring to a constellation of cities that interact on a planetary basis. Second, the system of global cities is built on the superposition theory, which provides for a conglomerate of office networks of transnational corporation, international institutions, cultural institutions, a whole mix of things, which is probably a result of corporate resolutions rather than collective work of city authorities. And third, that I would like to mention is that the elements of such networks are not evenly spread, which provides for a junction-based framework of modern cities, which means that cities themselves take quite a rigid framework. assume quite a rigid framework. As of today, on the basis of different researches, there are about 50 leading truly global cities in the world and a whole number of global centers that are just being formed. It's probably not a secret to anyone that the leadership still belongs to four centers: New York, London, Tokyo, and Paris. These are clear leaders in terms of global cities, among globalized cities. These four agglomerations account for about 10% of the world's GDP in total, and they concentrate up to 25% of head offices of multinationals, up to 25% of leading political institutions and international organizations, letting alone the fact that they are a major transportation network, aviation hubs, and as a matter of fact, these four cities act as management and controlling centers of the whole world economy. The second issue I would like to look at is the place Moscow occupies among leading global cities. There is a load of information that can be presented here. Probably the most informative and illustrative method is to look at the rankings that are normally done within the demographic area, geo-economic, socio-cultural, and geopolitical category. In the first instance, what can we say about Moscow? A geodemographic category. Among other megacities of the world, Moscow it ranks 22nd in accordance with the last data, and it's somewhat 3 times lags behind Tokyo, one of the leaders, one of the leading agglomerations, who's
geopolitical. The key indicator here is the level of concentration of headquarters of leading largest international companies and organizations. And I think this is, from my point of view, the weakest link of Moscow chain, which in every ratings is quite low in the table, and we can even say that this has been the heritage from the past. A number of geopolitical functions were lost by the city upon the collapse of the Soviet Union, and it is not yet up to the previous level. Geoeconomics. So the key indicator in this area is gross internal product. This is well known. From this point of view, the rating of key producing cities in the world are Tokyo and New York, which share the second place, more than $1.5 trillion. Moscow is modestly ranking 15th, lagging behind many emerging global centers, including Mexico City, Sao Paulo, Seoul, and a number of others. Social and cultural components. To this effect, the position of Moscow is quite prominent, even though it's very ambiguous. The Moscow is regarded very highly as an R&D and innovation center, as well as educational and cultural and events center. At the same time, relatively weak are indicators which relate to demographics, health of the population, quality, and contrasts in living standards. This is also well known. So, in other words, drawing the bottom line on block 2 of issues, we can deduce that in many ratings and rankings, Moscow is quite well off, but yet it is not in the global leaders club. The third block of issues are challenges and prospects of integration of Moscow into the system of global cities. I should say that there are quite many objective prerequisites for speedy integration of Moscow into the global structures. But I think it will be even more important to look closely and to try at least to preliminary analyze the barriers on that route within the framework of territorial systems of three levels, of three scales, which is the municipal level, the national level, and international level. Regarding the first one, municipal, well, parity-based cooperation a priori is just it's not just about the comparability, but also the contents of the parties being integrated. Moscow, just as many other largest city systems of the globe, features a great number of inherited and newly acquired social and territorial disproportions and problems. In recent times, the Moscow's government does a lot in terms to adopt and adjust to the Moscow environment, taking it up to international standards. This goes without comments. Then, national aspects. I would like in this regard to point to three issues. The place of Moscow in today's global context is the fruit of historical centralization of the nation, and the well-being of Moscow is based a lot on the capital rent and the location of largest taxpayers in Moscow. Moscow generates about 25% of the regional gross product of the country. At the same time, the real sector of the economy leaves much to be desired in its development. The overly disbalanced economy and financial sector of Moscow leaves little chance to healthy competition. In the States, they have about 3 dozens of global cities of various ranges. In Russia, it's just Moscow and St. Petersburg, perhaps with very great degree of relativity, perhaps Yekaterinburg. Then strengthening of international functions and focusing on the operations within global city networks, as global experience demonstrates, weakens interaction with neighbors and generally with the national territory. The consequences of this alienation, in inverted commas, of Moscow are very difficult to forecast and unpredictable. And finally, the third aspect, international. Looking at Moscow from the outside, from the perspective of international community, it appears, according to some of our researchers, that by and large, Moscow's image abroad is not very good. The system of working and promoting the new image of the capital is not yet fully efficient. There are lots of ways to improve that. Global economy is about parity. At the same time, Moscow, just as Russia in general, is very poorly represented by largest corporate players globally, and fostering of powerful and responsible Russia-based company is a strategic task of national importance, including organizations based and headquartered in Moscow. Thirdly, a very important feature of the wild capitalism, in inverted commas, of the 90s is still there in Moscow, and this is a concern for international investors and partners, which our forum is all about. I will not be telling a secret if I say that there is high level of concentration of red tape, imperfection and distortions in the taxation system, market monopolization, etc. This has to be dealt away with, and we are to come up with measures to improve the business environment. And finally, the fourth point, I should say that the capital of Russia is not expected in the club of global leading cities. No one is interested to foster a strong competitor, so we need to come up with a product which cannot be refused internationally and which is very welcomed. So from this point of view, we perhaps should be more aggressive and have an aggressive position of Moscow in terms of hosting or being home to large international events. And under the auspices of creativism of Moscow, we can think of a lot of important areas, starting with our own system of ratings of global cities, all the way to the projects of alignment of national statistics and monitoring of socioeconomic development of largest cities of the globe, which is yet insofar not the case. And to wrap up, I would like to emphasize that it is paramountly important to be clear about the key goal of development of Moscow. Whether Moscow is about acting as just a global financial center or being a comprehensive leader that is the true global city. This will predicate the development of the strategy and optimization of the model of development of the Russia's capital, including putting in place the system of possible preferences and incentives for investors. Most likely, this will be subject for the next session of the forum. Thank you for your attention.